welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, and we are not joined by Dakota Lasky this week because he is out in Colorado or somewhere like that on a little bit of a sojourn. So we've brought in one of my good friends from Zelda Dungeon, the managing editor, Lloyd. Rod, how you doing?
Hello.
It feels like it's been a while. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm ready to talk about some Metroid.
It's funny because, like, we say it's been a while. It has been a while on this show, but
it's been a while.
Yeah, it hasn't been that long in real life. Let's just say.
Yeah, we talk. I think every day.
pretty close. Yeah, pretty close. But man, you're one of the only guys I know that really loves Zelda and really loves Metroid, and by God, that's exactly what we need today because we are talking about Zelda and Metroid, and these are obviously two of my favorite things ever. And we have a little bit to go on here because this is the 35th anniversary year for both Metroid and for Zelda. So I'm excited to talk about this.
You'd be surprised to hear that it's the 35th anniversary of both of those franchises because Nintendo seems to have forgotten.
Well, before we even get into this show here, I have a question for you, Rod. So I hypothesized that we are going to see a Zelda-specific direct in the next little bit. What would you rate the chances of that happening as?
I think like a 65%. I think we're likely to see a large number of Zelda things towards the end of the year, like past E3. Like E3 time, we'll probably get something, and then we'll see like a flurry of announcements in the months to come after that. I don't think that we're going to get a Zelda-specific direct. But heck, I don't. Right. What do I know?
See, I think that it's like an 80% odds that we're gonna get a Zelda-specific direct. I'm the eternal optimist, so I think it's gonna happen. But man, what do you think the odds of getting a Metroid-specific anniversary direct are?
Oh, 2%.
Oh, that's higher than I have. I have -2%. So yeah. So a couple weeks ago, we tweeted out on the actual day, which is I'm looking and it's a month ago today. It was February the 21st is the actual day of the release of Legend of Zelda in Japan. And so we tweeted out from our Omega Metroid Twitter account at Omega Metroid Pod a really cool image of Samus and Link interacting and just basically wish Zelda a happy 35th anniversary. And this went not quite viral, but it did a lot of big business for our Twitter account, and a lot of people were like really into this, and we had asked like what's your dream Metroid and Zelda crossover, and we got such a big response that we decided just to do a whole entire show on it and see what we could come up with. And funny enough, actually, Dak really wanted to do this, and then unfortunately couldn't be here this week. So who better than to do this? I think than two guys that work at a Zelda website and also podcast about Metroid. Hey,
yeah.
Rob? So here we go. I guess first and foremost here, because I can hear it already from a lot of people. You know what? Zelda and Metroid, we're going to talk about what a crossover would look like and how fun that would be and the different ways that they could take form. However, I can hear everybody saying already, like, these shouldn't cross over. They should just stay their own things and be separate and blah, blah, blah. And you know what? Yeah, okay.
Those are the people who don't want to have any fun.
Yeah. But by God, we're going to have some fun, and we're going to imagine what a crossover would look like if it ever happened, and we realize that it probably never would happen. We realize it probably never needs to happen. We realize that, the audience for this probably wants their Zelda to stay Zelda and their Metroid to stay Metroid, but we're going to have some fun with this anyways. And you know what? It's not like this has to be a canon game and inform the events of the next Zelda or the next Metroid game. I think that, let's say in this hypothetical world that we're going to be stepping into, the Metroid Zelda crossover, I think, could totally just be its own thing, its own game, exist on an island. You already see that in the Zelda series, where we have these like weird spin-off games like Cadence of Hyrule or like even Age of Calamity, and those are just kind of their own things, and I think that those work really well, just being on an island by themselves.
And I bet you in 10 years, Other M will be treated the same way.
You know what? I have some more thoughts on Other M that I was going to bring up really quick. Rod, did you happen to check out any of our Other M commentary?
I did not. But you were telling me a little bit about it when you were going through the game last time.
I was surprised at how generous Dak was for Other M and how ungenerous I was for Other M. We kind of pulled the double turn there actually during our episode. So there you go. I wouldn't be shocked to see those characters turn up maybe sometime in the future, but I guess that's neither here nor there. One thing that we do know exists already is there are Zelda and Metroid crossovers, at least in the world of randomizers, and like there's a very very popular randomizer that basically is like mashing A Link to the Past with Super Metroid. It seems very very cool. Like you can move all of your items from like Super Metroid, and like you find the Morph Ball in Misery Mire or something like that. And it's kind of all over the place. It seems very cool, and this is the kind of energy I feel like that would be really cool for making a successful Zelda Metroid crossover. Rod, you're not much of a randomizer guy, right?
No.
Yeah, neither am I.
That stuff's way over my head. I'm just not smart enough.
I feel like we were talking right before about how our computers are like not that great, and I feel like you probably need a decent or a more decent computer than I have to run that properly. But it's always been something that I've really wanted to try. And from all accounts, like the Link to the Past and Super Metroid randomizer is supposed to be like really awesome, actually.
It's not like where Link can use Samus's weapons and vice versa, right? It's more like you collect items in Zelda that then when you jump over to the Super Metroid side of things that you can use them there, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, see, I think if you're going to do a crossover, I feel like the expectation is that Link will be able to use Samus's arsenal and Samus can use Link's arsenal in some respects.
Well, let's I'll tell you what. So Rod and I both kind of have general ideas about what we would love to see for a Zelda and Metroid crossover. And we're going to get to some of your guys' ideas too from that tweet that we sent out last month. Rod, what do you want to start with? Do you want to start with our ideas, or should we go over some of the ideas that our followers had?
I think we should go first, and then we can riff on everyone else's ideas. Theirs are probably better than ours. Well,
yeah, probably. I'm gonna, and I feel like your ideas are probably gonna be better than mine. So I'm gonna give you the floor, and you can tell me if it ever happened, if Nintendo was just like, it's the 35th anniversary of both of these series, let's do something special, and they made a Zelda and Metroid crossover game. What do you hope that would look like and play like?
So going back to that fan art that you shared on Twitter, for those who didn't see it, it shows Link kind of emerging from a forest. He's got his bow in his hand, and he sees Samus's starship crashed. Like it had crash landed in Hyrule or Hyrule Field or something, and Samus is standing on top of it, and it looks like this standoff is about to happen between the two characters. And when I saw that artwork, I immediately thought of a Star Wars Indiana Jones comic crossover that had happened. Did you ever hear about that or read about that?
No, but that seems kind of natural, actually.
So the story goes in that Han Solo and Chewbacca are flying through space, and they crash land on Earth, essentially. And it's kind of sad. Han Solo dies, but Chewbacca is left all on his own in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. So Indiana Jones, in one of his adventures, is searching for the fabled Sasquatch, and he comes across Chewbacca, and they have an adventure together. I feel like if something like Zelda and Metroid were to be combined, I feel like one of the heroes would need to be completely plucked out of their respective universe, right? Like Samus would need to be crash landed in Hyrule without any of her gear, or with limited gear, not be able to go up into space, and have like a earthbound adventure with Link. Or Link would need to somehow be transported to a galactic setting where he can, travel. Maybe he's in, Mother Brain's base or something, and he's all on his own, and it's like a new environment for him. I feel like it can't go back and forth. What do you think about that?
I agree. I agree that it should be. I think that it should either be one person is out of their kind of ideal environment, or maybe even ideally both of them are, and like you have some kind of I don't know, some kind of shenanigans where both Link and both Samus are not where, like, you're not in Hyrule or you're not in Galactic Federation space. And I think that there is a few different ways that you could probably achieve that, but it's probably easier to tell a story where one of them is still in their environment and the other one comes over.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think that like, kind of going back to the randomizer, you can't flip flop in between like Zebes and then Hyrule and then Zebes and Hyrule. That works for a randomizer, but if we're going to try and tell a story, which, we probably are in our crossover here, it doesn't really lend itself very well to that.
So, like, I was thinking, like, I like tried to look at it from both ways, right? Like, what would a Metroid game set in Hyrule look like, right? And part of me thinks it would be kind of cool for Samus to crash land. And I feel like the best, like Metroid Prime, like the best parts of those games are Samus exploring like a very lonely, decrepit civilization that has long since died. You know what I mean? Like piecing piecing the puzzle together, finding out what happened to these people, what happened to the civilization. Like, was there a calamity or was there, space pirate intervention or whatever? I think if Samus was to crash land in Hyrule, it would have to be after Hyrule has gone.
I could see like a Breath of the Wild kind of serving as a good place for like a Metroid typical setting, right? Because in Breath of the Wild's Hyrule, you do have a lot of ruins and a lot of civilization used to be here, but then you still have like the lush areas and like the different geographical settings and stuff like that. The Hyrule of Breath of the Wild would really lend itself particularly well.
Yeah,
I think
that's exactly what I was thinking. And like Samus, that's the thing. I don't know if it's like nature has taken back over, and she has to battle like Deku Babas and other natural monsters, and then that's the thing. I don't even know. Like, it would be weird to see Samus fight Ganon. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it would just have to be a Metroid game where like the Metroid has invaded the Zelda world and not really like too much interaction, because it would just be too strange. I feel like Samus involving herself in the affairs of like a royal family just doesn't make any sense. It's too goofy.
Right.
Whereas
I think it works better if like you kind of said, like there's nothing left, and
right.
like maybe like you could do the whole like you find Link and you actually like recharge him in the Shrine of Resurrection. But I was gonna say too, like I'm not actually convinced that if we had a Metroid Zelda crossover, that both Link and both Samus need to be present. I feel like
right.
maybe only one of them does.
I think I agree with you there. There was like 15 years ago, they did like I think it was Activision published a pair of games starring Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon, and they just like somehow flip-flopped, right? Like Spyro ended up in Crash's world and Crash ended up in Spyro's world, and you played a traditional Spyro the Dragon game starring Crash Bandicoot and a traditional Crash Bandicoot game starring Spyro the Dragon. Zelda game, but starring Samus.
Awesome,
maybe
actually.
She's crash landed in Hyrule, and she has a limited arsenal, but different. Like it'll have that Metroid flavor in Hyrule. So she's out there, going through dungeons and whatever it is she's doing, saving the castle. I don't know. Whereas Link is like transported to Planet Zebes, and he is out of his depth, but he's a cunning warrior, so he's able to explore this space station using his limited arsenal, and I think it could
right.
work, even if it's just like, even if it was just a side-scrolling Metroidvania game starring Link. I could see him doing that.
I think so. So I had two different pitches here, and I based both of those pitches on the idea that even if we have a Zelda and Metroid crossover, that both Samus and Link don't need to be present in both of them, because I think that would kind of take away from it. So my first like ideal scenario that I'll pitch you, and this is the one that I would be most excited about seeing, I think personally, is a few weeks ago on the Champions Cast, I had pitched a cyberpunk Zelda game, and I'm big into that cyberpunk stuff. I love that genre and that aesthetic, and like to me, that's just like such an interesting world, and like you can play this so much. And so my idea was to have like Zelda, but set in the future, like take Ganon, and instead of him being like this evil wizard, now we have like Ganon Corp, which is like this evil conglomerate, which is taking over everything, right? And like you can kind of transition the classic Zelda tropes and make them more modern and stuff like that. And I feel like if you were gonna do if you were gonna do like a cyberpunk Zelda game, like that would fit in really well with Metroid. And so it's totally easy to see. And you know what? You probably actually even could include Link in this setting if you really wanted to. But it would be easy to see, like, Samus and her gunship landing on this planet called Hyrule, and maybe there's an artifact there. Maybe she's retrieving the Master Sword. Maybe she's doing something completely different and is just there by happenstance. Whatever, right? That would lure Samus in, and we could still have, like, kind of the classic idea for these enemies, but like reimagined to be a little bit more futuristic. So we have kind of the essence of them, but they're different and they're updated in order to reflect not only the Metroid world, but like a futuristic kind of sci-fi world in general. Because I feel like Cyberpunk Zelda has been, something that Zelda fans have talked about for a long time, and like, something that fans have wanted to see in one aspect or another. Maybe not all the fans, but some of them. So I feel like that could work. And I feel like if you're already going to take Zelda and make it into this like futuristic, Blade Runner-esque universe, like, what's the harm in throwing Samus in there too? Or like Captain Falcon or something. Like, heck, get like Star Fox. Like, who cares, right? Like, if you're going to take that chance with Zelda, I feel like Samus could totally fit into that. So I don't know. Wait, that's my scenario one. What do you think of that?
I feel like the issue is like you've had to already jerry-rig the Zelda series and the Zelda formula so much just to make it, plausible for him to meet these other characters like like Samus, right, and like Captain Falcon. So it's like taking Zelda and calling it like, Cyberpunk Zelda and then making it in the future. I feel like you've already changed it so much, and that would be cool on its own. Like, I think that would be awesome if Nintendo decided to just do that, right? Like, create a new type of Zelda game with, a much more futuristic setting, but then also throwing in the other characters. That might just be a little too much. Mm-hmm. Like, you'd have to like have one game that's just Cyberpunk Zelda, and then have the sequel with all the fan servicey stuff.
I agree, actually, and this is where scenario 2 comes in, because I do think that, like, in that scenario, it's kind of 2 degrees of separation rather than 1. So I think that if I were to dial it back and go a different way, that actually we could make a really, really enticing Zelda and Metroid crossover here. So the flip side of that idea is actually take it the other way, and let's go like classic setting, and let's take Link, and he somehow, some way finds himself on an ancient planet, and there is, and imagine a world like Breath of the Wild's Hyrule. On this planet, there are still tons of ruins. There used to be a civilization that lived here. There's a lot of like, high-tech stuff, but similar to the way that Breath of the Wild is high-tech with like the Divine Beast and stuff like that. And where we are is we find ourselves on a classic Chozo planet. Maybe the planet where the Chozo first originally came from. And you can set your adventure from here. It's a big open world exploration adventure. And Link can slowly uncover the secrets of the Chozo, what happened, where they all went, see a little bit about like where they came from, learn the history of the Chozo, and who knows, maybe even learn the history of who would come to be Samus too, because they do talk about in Metroid Prime how there's this like prophecy of the one who will like bring the light, or whatever it is that they say. So you could see the seeds for the warrior that would go on to become Samus in this scenario. So I feel like this one is maybe a little bit less jarring because the world, I think, could be structured in a similar way to Breath of the Wild. We just need to swap the enemies out for some, maybe some classic Metroid enemies, and swap some of the ruins out from Sheikah ruins to Chozo ruins. So I feel like that maybe is a little bit less of a degree of separation. What do you think about that one?
I agree. I like that one way better. It got me thinking about like possibilities. Like if I was structuring the game, I would have Link start, like you said, he's woken up in this like unfamiliar place, similar to Breath of the Wild. Like he doesn't know what's going on, where he's at, and he starts exploring. And I would set the game in just like an old Chozo temple, right? Similar to the ones you see in Metroid Prime 1, right? Where for the most part it's pretty low tech. So this could be even like a twist thing. Like the players start the game not realizing that it's a futuristic world, or like on another planet, and he's exploring these ruins. It's low tech. It's just stone. And then little by little, as Link explores, just like he would in Breath of the Wild or any other Zelda game, he starts seeing hints of like high technology. We tell a story, and he's like, "What the heck? What's going on? Where am I at?" And from that, and then there comes that point where just like you would in a Zelda game, you reach Hyrule Field, and the game just opens up. He like leaves this temple area, and the world has opened up, and he realizes that he is in the far reaches of space. And there are like, I don't know, robotic plants and like crashed spaceships, and like a derelict ship or something like that. I think that would be pretty cool.
I think that'd be cool too, especially if like obviously I think you'd market it as like it's going to be a crossover, but like it'd be kind of cool if it just snuck up on you and it was surprising or whatever, and like seeing Link walk into some field, and like let's say that there's like a Metroid, or he finds the lab where the Chozo first created Metroids on. Even if it was set on like SR 388, that could probably work. But I think that would be like really, really interesting, and not plausible, because I don't think a crossover is plausible really at all. But like if it was going to happen, I feel like that one could be a little bit more plausible. I
think like from a gameplay perspective, the Zelda gameplay formula lends itself better to this kind of crossover than the Metroid one does. Because because Metroid, it's still an adventure game, but it has more shooter elements and just kind of like fast action in some places. I feel like it just doesn't make sense to set that type of game in Hyrule's like wide open fields and that kind of thing. But with Zelda, like even before Breath of the Wild, like the Zelda formula where it's like, you have your fair bit of exploration, but then you go to a dungeon, and every dungeon has its own little theme. You solve puzzles and you fight a boss, and then you move on. I feel like if you were to have in your supposed crossover game where Link is exploring this unnamed planet, there could be themed dungeons, like I said, a derelict ship, or he like, finds a portal and goes off planet, and like he's on like a space station, and have the space station be like, orbiting the planet, and that's a dungeon, or, even subterranean like tunnels and stuff like that. Like I feel like Zelda and its dungeon formula work really well for that, and you can put it in any game.
Yeah, that would be really exciting, I feel like, actually. I had one more scenario here, and it's kind of a crossover, but it's kind of not. And this one involved both of our protagonists here, and I feel like I can already hear people not being in love with this idea, but I'm going to pitch it anyways, by God. So, one of the first Switch games that I bought was Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and it was so fun. And I feel like if they did kind of like a Smash Bros-esque version of this, where it's like it's this silly, goofy game, and you could even use the Rabbids if you really want as like the time travel scapegoats or whatever to get everybody there. But like if you did that and you mashed Zelda and Metroid together, or like I said, you could even go bigger if you really want and do like Super Smash Bros. But like Zelda and Metroid, obviously in particular, I feel like that could be like really really good. You could have like Toon Link as your guy because he's a little bit more goofy, and like Samus could play like the straight man or whatever, and like kind of be the stoic, serious one with kind of rolling her eyes at all the goofiness of like the rabbits and Toon Link or whatever. I think that could actually work. I remember just like being so pleasantly surprised at this Mario Rabbit game that I've always kind of thought that they should go back to this and do that with another series, whether it was Zelda or Metroid or like Smash or whatever. And I'm surprised that they haven't made a sequel to that actually, because it was really good. But I've always thought that could be something that that is easy to do, especially if you just like literally pick off where the other game left off, use the rabbits, because I don't know, I guess they move through time or something, and that's how you could get your heroes together. It'd be easy. It would probably be fun because that game was really fun, and I would love to see it. I know that some people, don't really love to see comedy in Metroid or in Zelda for that matter, and I don't blame them because I don't love to see a ton of comedy either. But if it was just like a side game, like a one-off, I think I would be okay with that. Rod, what do you think about that?
Would it still be a like strategy game like Rabbids?
If it were up to me, it would be, yeah.
I could see that. What was that? There was like a game that was similar in style to that Rabbids game, like gameplay wise, that was set in space. Gosh, what was that?
Oh, you got me. Was it a Rabbids game?
No. It was like it was a similar strategy game, not unlike like your Fire Emblem, where it's like grid based combat, right. And you can name your squad, your friends' names, and they would die, and if they died permanently in the game.
That sounds like what Federation Force should have been.
Now you think about it, that would have been pretty cool if Federation Force was more like a strategy game.
And we're gonna talk about that in a few short weeks here about how we would have how we would have done Federation Force and made it a cool game. But yeah, I feel like the Mario Rabbit formula could really work for that. Obviously, it's goofy and whatever, and probably not as attractive as like Link exploring these old Chozo ruins, or even Samus in a cyberpunk world. But like, I feel like I would be down to see something like that because I really enjoyed that game. So I've always kind of pushed for it to come back. So I would be cool with that if that ever happened.
I think it'd be cool. I think if you're gonna take the Rabbids formula at this point, it would have to be like you'd have to expand it because they started with the Mario characters and then they moved on to Donkey Kong. Like, just do all of Nintendo at that point, right? Nintendo plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Or
I thought for sure that there would be a sequel to that game by this point, because like that was like 4 years ago now that game came out, and I think it did pretty well. And that's probably the most realistic version of a Zelda and Metroid crossover that we're gonna get.
I think so, yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I feel like one scenario that I didn't consider here, which I guess maybe I should have, because the image that we posted kind of suggested that Link and Samus are about to square off, but we did have some people, talk about like the two of them actually engaging in like a big brawl, which I thought was kind of cool, but I was also like, oh, okay, well that's like kind of what we do in Smash Bros. Here. But we did have a bunch of people that gave us some ideas for what their ideal Metroid Zelda crossover would look like, and I want to go through these because some of these are pretty cool actually.
The good ideas got me thinking in this one.
Yeah. So I mean, we have our first one here from Nightmare Phazon, and this is probably a pretty good solid foundation for how this adventure could happen. But they said it would be cool if Samus landed on a planet, was wandering around the ancient ruins of Hyrule and meets Link. I feel like that's a pretty solid introduction to how this crossover could have happened. Maybe
took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah, like I feel like all you need to do is throw in like she went through a wormhole or something and she's transported to a different world and crash lands on this planet. I feel like if you throw that in there, like that's a good enough explanation for me.
I think the only issue is like once they meet each other, like it just doesn't. I don't know. Like this is already a goofy, scenario in the first place. But like how would they react to each other? You know.
It's
both characters
because...
are strongest when they're not talking. I don't want to see them communicate with each other.
Right. Yeah, and I was just gonna say that it's tough because neither of them talk. Like Samus kind of talks here and there, but not really. Right. Like, and in fact, the less Samus talks, usually
the better.
The better, at least in my opinion. And Link, the only time we've ever heard him talk is in the cartoon and the CDI games. So, I think that you could do it where you just kind of use like physical language rather than like a lot of words, like because it's probably reasonable to assume that I don't know is Hylian the same as English in the Galactic Federation language. Who knows?
I mean, maybe Samus has like a language chip in her helmet that lets her hear what "yet" means.
Yeah. Hey, I would also be okay with that explanation too. Actually, if they really wanted to go that road, but I think that you could do it without like tons of dialogue between them. This is kind of a cool idea here. So this is from Kyle, and he says, for the boss fight, Link uses guerrilla tactics and environmental hazards against Samus due to her superior weapons and armor. It could be repeated throughout the game as Link and Samus both improve their arsenal and culminate in a team-up against the real antagonist. So this is kind of a cool idea that I actually hadn't really considered when I was thinking of like a Zelda Metroid crossover. He's doing like the whole Batman versus Superman gimmick here, where like our heroes are going to start off fighting against each other, but then unite against a common enemy. And actually, I could be behind that if it was done, if it was done the right way.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about them fighting each other, but then his description makes it sound like Predator, and that I'd be down with. Like Link has to be the survivalist and like use stealth, for example, to avoid Samus and maybe like get a few licks in, between the trees or something like that. Cover himself in mud and to avoid her thermal goggles or something.
That would be so cool, actually. Because, I mean, I think on the surface, of course, when you think about it, like, who's going to win in a fight, Link or Samus? Like, the obvious answer is, like, Samus is going to waste Link. But I think if you were to be creative, like, imagine Link using Magnesis and, like, completely rendering Samus obsolete with her metallic suit.
Or shooting her with like an electric arrow, for example, to, like, you know.
So I think that it would be a closer fight than some fans maybe think. And also, if you wanted to kind of like go, we've only been talking about Breath of the Wild Link here too, but if we wanted to pull some other aspects from other games, like, Link has got like the golden gauntlets from Ocarina of Time, so like the dude can pick up boulders and just chuck them, and he's got all these crazy items that he's been using throughout the course of the series that he could probably have his arsenal here.
I want to see Link capture a Metroid in a bottle.
Yeah.
And set it free to, like, attack her.
I think that would be cool, man, if they did, like, end up going at it. And maybe that's probably what would end up happening, because, Samus sure looks like a threat, I'm sure, to someone like Link.
Yeah, she looks like an iron knuckle.
Honestly, yeah. So, yeah, that would be a cool scenario, I think. Who do you think would be, like, a good end game antagonist for these two? Because I feel like if you were going to do a crossover, you don't want to have someone like Mother Brain or Ridley or Ganondorf, because I feel like that leans too far into like both of their worlds. So I feel like it should either be someone fresh or like someone totally, I don't know, unexpected. Like imagine if they brought in that guy from Super Smash Bros. As the antagonist. Taboo, I think was his name or something.
Oh yeah.
That would be something I think would be cool if like it was someone like that. What do you think?
Well, somebody in the comments there suggested something interesting. It was like Calamity Ridley or something like that, where like Malice from Breath of the Wild has infected Ridley, or Mother Brain, and so the essence of Ganon is in them, but it's still them. You know what I mean? Like they've been corrupted by Ganon's evil, so they're like double evil.
That would be actually really cool too. I didn't think about that. Man, can you imagine how wicked Malice Ridley would look?
Yeah, I'd be down with that.
Oh, I would be definitely down for that. I don't know if I'd be down for that as like the mastermind end game boss, but I think that would be. I think that'd be pretty cool. So we got another one. We got another one here from Samantha, and she says maybe Samus crashes into Breath of the Wild's Hyrule in the Age of Calamity timeline, and decides to investigate what she believes to be Chozo artifacts, actually Sheikah technology, and along her travels, she meets the champions Link and Zelda. So kind of a similar scenario to the one that we laid out at the beginning, and even kind of similar to the scenario that I pitched, where Samus is kind of doing it backwards, where she thinks she's investigating Chozo, but it's actually Sheikah. I think that this would be like a pretty plausible explanation as well. Although the only difference with this scenario, which I'm not like, I don't know if I'm totally on board with, is that she meets the champions Link and Zelda, because then we run into that problem where she's got to interact with them, and
Yeah.
you know,
That's the part that got me hesitant, because I was like, I don't know if I want to see Samus interacting with these people. As awesome as they all are, it just seems out of place. But then at the same time, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, it would be cool to see Samus and Urbosa have like an arm wrestling match or something.
I mean, the question, who do you think would win?
Oof. No power armor. Like, I think Urbosa could give Samus a run for her money. She's just too buff.
Yeah, Urbosa's she's pretty buff. She's got like the 8-pack going on. So if anyone's going to beat Samus in an arm wrestling match, it's going to be her. This is kind of a cool one here, and I hadn't put together the amount of similarities here, but we have I'm probably going to butcher your name. I'm sorry, Chosen Zoku, who suggested that we have a specific setting for this, where it's like Prime 2, so Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, crossed with Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, where each character gets a chance to fight each other's enemies on unfamiliar terrain, and none of them knew anything about this. But the cool thing about this one that I thought is it would make this work if you really wanted to, is like in both Metroid Prime 2 Echoes and in Link Between Worlds and A Link Between or A Link to the Past, you have these like portals which take you to these alternate versions of the world. And I think that could actually be like a pretty cool concept if you did want to say like, this is going to transport us even farther away than we think. Because in both of those games, you see a dark version of the world. But I don't know, that might be a cool setup to get to this crossover.
I do like the idea of like Zelda's Dark World being fueled by, what is it? Is it the Ing in Metroid Prime 2? Is that what they're called?
Yes.
So it would be it would be a cool revelation if throughout the course of whoever's adventure you're following, right, you realize that the Ing have created the Dark World from Zelda, and this could jump back over to what you said about having like this new antagonist that kind of is pulling the strings. It could be like this, whatever the true source of the Ing are, creating these alternate dimensions all throughout the galaxy, and somehow he's connected Hyrule to, whatever that planet is in that game.
We're at like whatever world that takes place in.
Yeah, exactly. So like Link enters a portal, think he's going to go back to Hyrule, and he just shows up on that planet.
Yeah, I would like that. That would be a really cool scenario, I feel like. We talked about how like they don't both need to be there, and how like you would need to change the worlds a little bit to accommodate them. But I do kind of think that it would be cool to see, kind of like you mentioned with like Crash and Spyro, where it's just like literally the two heroes are like flip-flopped and they're in these totally different worlds. I do think that would be kind of a cool thing to do as well.
I think that's probably the safest way to do it. It's the method that will keep both series like pure, so to speak, So you're still getting the pure Zelda experience and the pure Metroid experience. You just have a different protagonist with a different set of skills.
So let's keep going here and go to another suggestion, and this one is from Dinosaur. Kind of a cool little thing that we don't talk about a whole lot here. They say that's a tough one. While not talked about much, Samus does have access to mystic arts and connections due to her Chozo lineage, and so a Chozo settled place on the planet that has Hyrule would be a unique setting that she and Link could explore. So that actually sounds kind of similar to what I pitched at the start here, but like it's, Metroid does have these mystic elements that aren't often explored, and like Zelda of course deals in magic all the
Right.
time, so that could be kind of cool too. I for one, I'm like really, I think it would be really cool to like see the parallels between like the Sheikah technology and like the Chozo technology, because they're both kind of like these fabled races that were very technologically advanced, but for the most part aren't around anymore by the times that the actual games take place. I think that could be pretty cool.
I'm like thinking about Phantoon from Super Metroid, right? And like how that's just such a trippy, otherworldly entity. And like, I think it's time to like, promote Phantoon to be like,
Yeah, that'd be cool. And they kind of did level up Phantoon as well, as much as you can level up a character like that in Metroid Other M too, where he is the secret final boss, and like we see Phantoon, and there's more to him than we saw in Super Metroid, and he's like this giant spectral being. So he could be a cool catalyst too for like, instead of like a wormhole or whatever, like that's what Samus is going through, and that's how she ends up in another dimension. I think that could be cool too.
yeah. She like chases him down, and like they go through some kind of interdimensional rift, and that's how she ends up in Hyrule.
I would, yeah, I could see that as like a new, or like a feasible way to get this crossover to happen too. It would be good as well, because like I feel like Metroid needs another kind of like A-list enemy. Like we have Ridley, we have Mother Brain, we have Dark Samus, and we haven't had like an A-list enemy introduced like that in a long time. So I think that could be, I think that could work.
It's like the same criticism could be lobbied at Zelda in a certain respect as well,
Totally. Like the problem with Zelda is that you have your A-list enemy, which is Ganon / Ganondorf, but then you have a plethora of like B+ enemies that are like Skull Kid or Girahim or Zant or whatever.
Right.
But no one is on that main bad guy level. And actually, to talk about Zelda here for a sec, I think that Breath of the Wild 2 is going to change that, because I think that I don't know. I have a feeling that they're like, whoever that person was we saw in the trailer maybe isn't exactly who we all think it is, and maybe that's a new big bad guy for the series. But that's neither here nor there. This is kind of a cool it's kind of a cool idea here about a complex that is under Hyrule. So Rabid Wookie says, I want a game with a massive open world overworld and a huge dungeon complex underneath. So Samus could fly herself and Link around, dropping off Link to explore specific areas on the surface while she investigates the dungeon below. So this is a cool idea, like more so from a gameplay perspective, because it's kind of playing to both series strengths, where like you have this open world, but you still have dungeons that exist in this open world. But it's almost like, I'm reading this as like you could almost go into like, say, the Shrine of Resurrection, go down, and like you have like a complex, like a big shadow complex or whatever, that you can explore almost like 2D, like Samus would in a standard Metroid game here. I don't know that both of the protagonists need to be in their respective crossovers. I mean, I guess that's kind of the appeal for doing it in a lot of ways, but this is at least kind of a good idea in terms of like giving them, the gameplay that really is the strength of either series.
The thing about this suggestion that I like the most is like Samus and Link like riding off together, and then Samus having to drop Link off to do something that she can't do. But then I'm trying to think, like, what can Link do that Samus can't do? Samus doesn't need Link to explore a subterranean dungeon, because she already does that. She could probably do it better. She can get into tighter spaces. I don't know. She's got just as much equipment as he does. So I'm like, what would Samus need Link to do for her?
Right. Well, the answer that pops into my mind is like Link is pretty, he's pretty able to flow through time in a lot of games, or at least like drastically change his scenarios, like in seasons.
That's
let's
fair.
just say
That's
that
fair.
he can change the terrain. Link to the Past, he can kind of open up these alternate portal worlds and stuff like that. Obviously Ocarina of Time, Oracle of Ages, he can travel through time, so that could be kind of a cool aspect to explore as well, where it's like an adventure over time or something.
Like it would be interesting, like if there was like this. I don't know, like if we're using this commenter suggestion, like there's the surface world, like the overworld, where Link has to kind of like run back and forth between these like I don't know temples or nodes where he can manipulate the whether it be flow of time or some kind of spiritual mechanisms that inform what happens underneath, so that Samus can like proceed through the facility. So Link has to run around and use his magic to change what's going on underground while Samus is trying to explore it like she would. That would be cool.
Let's do one more here from Jessamino Tanlejos. I'm sorry, Jess, I probably butchered that, but here we go. They say it would be a great crossover of Metroid and Star Fox, which makes more sense. And another commenter earlier had said that they thought that Zelda and Kid Icarus would be a better crossover as well, which actually I find funny because I feel like Metroid and Kid Icarus would be the more like logical crossover because there's so much crossover between those two series already, or at least there was back in the day. But we talked about, and Dak and I talked about Star Fox and Metroid doing a crossover like way back when. Rod, what series do you think would like really work if you could take your pick of like absolutely any Nintendo series, like, and you could make a crossover, what would it be? Because a lot of people think Star Fox is the one.
It's the most obvious for sure. Like I think just in terms of setting and gameplay, like you could totally have a Star Fox game, but also just have Samus be in the game as an optional character to play as. You just play through a Star Fox course with her starship. But I'm thinking, and I'm like, I would like Captain Falcon to just come back. I'm not a big fan of racing games, so F-Zero is, give it or leave it or whatever. I don't need another racing game, but it would be cool to just have Captain Falcon come back and just have him be a character in Metroid.
Man, see, that's what I said. I was like, it makes so much sense.
They're both bounty hunters, right?
They're both bounty hunters. There's no reason that their worlds couldn't coexist because they're like, they're these realistic sci-fi futuristic worlds, and like, the dude's a bounty hunter. Samus is a bounty hunter. That feels like a natural to me.
I think so.
So yeah, I'm glad to hear you say. I'm glad to hear you say Captain Falcon and F-Zero, because in my mind that's always been like the most like, especially because that's a series that really has like, it's gone nowhere in the last decade. There's no momentum to it. I feel like that could at least elevate it a little bit beyond, the absolute like ice cold status that it has right now. I don't know.
It's less sacred than Metroid is, right? Like you can get away with changing up the F-Zero universe more than you could the Metroid universe at this point, and like we like to joke that Nintendo is, kind of not treating Metroid like a priority, but like F-Zero is way worse. So if you just want to like just change up the F-Zero formula completely, just put Captain Falcon in a Metroid game, like no one would care. I would think no one would care.
Think so. Because like,
and just like I think at that point it's like you can have some fun with it, like make Captain Falcon be like, I don't know, use it to make fun of Captain Falcon, like he's like this cocky bounty hunter that's always getting like, maybe in this adventure he's always crossing paths with Samus and screwing up a bounty for her or something like that, and like that would be a fun story moment, and then towards the end of the game they have to team up to fight a common enemy. I'd be down.
I just feel like, so we talked about the crossover that I would love between Zelda and Metroid is a cyberpunk crossover, but that's mostly just because I want a cyberpunk Zelda. And, to get to that crossover with Metroid, it's like 2 degrees of separation. But like, man, with Falcon showing up in a Metroid game, I feel like that's like no degrees of separation, because they're like the same worlds basically. Like, it's totally believable to think that there is like this planet where these F-Zero races are like really big business, but also controlled by this like kind of shadowy underworld. And it's totally believable to think that could exist in the same world where like the Galactic Federation are rooting out space pirates and like fighting the X and fighting Metroids. Like that seems like believable to me, you know?
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's
I want to punch Mother Brain with a Falcon Punch.
that would be satisfying as heck. You could break that glass in one punch.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's I'm glad to
It'd
hear
be
you say
like,
that makes me feel good.
I was like, modding community, anyone out there, I want to see a version of Super Metroid, at the very end of the game when the evolved Mother Brain is about to take Samus out. Instead of Baby Metroid, I want to see Captain Falcon fly in with a Falcon Punch, and that's what weakens Mother Brain so that Samus can finish it off.
Any of you modders out there, you heard the man. Get to work. But yeah, like I feel like, I mean, obviously a Zelda and Metroid crossover game is not very likely to happen, and it's probably a niche idea because you and I are such big Zelda fans and such big Metroid fans. But like, I feel like I don't hold either series like sacred in the way that I don't think I can make an exception to see like a fun standalone on an island game, and it was kind of goofy, but also kind of cool because you have these worlds colliding. I feel like I could totally see that and have it be a thing and be okay with it, and I wouldn't be offended that it existed. I feel like it could very much be in the same vein as like Alien versus Predator, where like, you know what, that movie doesn't really hold a canon spot in the Alien franchise or the Predator franchise, but it's just something fun for fans. And I would totally love to see that as well. And I think that, like, if we're being realistic, obviously I don't think it'll ever happen. If it does happen, it'll probably be like the Mario Rabbids or like some kind of an NES remix deal where you can swap games and characters and stuff like that. I could maybe see that, but I don't know. I think the scenarios that we laid out, I would be pretty intrigued to play as both a Metroid and a Zelda fan.
Speaking of Rabbids, that game I was thinking about earlier was XCOM. So if you want to do an XCOM style game starring Samus, Link, Mario, and the Rabbids, we would not be against it.
Oh yeah, I'd be totally for that. You know what? And I've heard that game is actually pretty cool. Yeah.
So I think that's, if you're gonna do something with the Rabbids, that's the best way to do it. But I don't even think it needs to be silly and goofy. At the end of the day, like, if it's done well and it keeps both series strong and gets the most out of both series, I'd be cool with it, even if they played it dead serious.
Right. Well, and I think that you could play it dead serious, and like, there are some people that are going to play it and be like, oh, this is ridiculous because these series are, not meant to be together. But I mean, like, imagine, like, in the scenario that we laid out, like, Samus exploring Chozo ruins, or like some kind of like Link going into the Galactic Federation HQ. There's no reason why you couldn't play that like as serious as you normally would. I think that Zelda has it's a bit more of a lighter touch and a lighter tone than Metroid typically is, but
yeah,
like, if you were, I think that you could definitely do it without making like gags out of it like you would in the Rabbids game, for sure.
Right. That's the great thing about both series, is you can do it both ways.
So yeah, there we go. Well, I hope that we're hearing more about Zelda and Metroid very soon. Big year for both, and Nintendo, in the Nintendo Direct that we had earlier this year, didn't acknowledge either. So I wasn't surprised that they didn't acknowledge Metroid, but I was surprised that they didn't acknowledge Zelda. So I'm thinking that there's got to be a little bit left in the can.
But what about Skyward Sword?
Well, but so they acknowledged it, but they didn't like outright say like, this is Zelda's 35th anniversary and like make like a big deal about it.
They didn't make a spectacle of the anniversary.
Like with Mario, they had the whole 35th anniversary thing where it was like, oh, we're doing this and this and this and this. They didn't have that with Zelda. I wasn't expecting it with Metroid, but I'm hoping that both of these series do get something, kind of cool to commemorate the big anniversary. With Metroid, I mean, frankly, just a new game would be kind of cool. But I I guess we will wait and see. I still am holding on to that belief that there's a new 2D Metroid game coming out this year. I don't know why I believe that, but I do. So we will see. We will see.
I'm so down with it, man. Metroid, the Samus Returns is excellent.
And Mercury Steam has gotta been working on something. All right, well, we want to know what you guys think about our ideas of what your ideal Metroid Zelda crossover would be. You're not allowed to say you wouldn't want one. We want to hear what you think about if it were to ever happen. What do you think would be the absolute best way to make this game work? Let us know over on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod. We are out of here. We want you to check us out over on Podbean, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast. Like, subscribe to the Omega Metroid Pod. Tell that Metroid fan in your life where they can get their weekly Metroid fix. Rod, thanks for filling in for Dak this week, man. Tell everybody where they can check out your podcast, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, if you want to follow me personally on Twitter, that's at Rod the Master. At Rod the Master. But I just started a new podcast with my wife. We talk about movies, music, and TV from the 80s and the early 90s. It's called Media Made. That's M-A-D-E, Media Made. On Twitter, at Media Made Show. At Media Made Show.
And I was definitely on Team GNR, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
Oh, yeah. So we had an episode where we compared Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction to Michael Jackson's Bad, both albums from 1987, and it was an all-out war.
Boy.
So if that sounds interesting, check us out.
Check that out. You can check me out over on Twitter. I'm at Spiteri316. Of course, we are at Omega Metroid Pod. And we're gonna see you next week. We are diving into all of the rumor and innuendo surrounding Metroid Dread. Until then, everybody, take care.
I've been looking everywhere for you. Hyrule is under attack. What are you doing?
Well, excuse me, Princess. I've been listening to Virtual Theater's episodes all about the Legend of Zelda cartoon. They're both hilarious and insightful.
Okay, Link, I guess you're off the hook. I've heard that Virtual Theater is a podcast that only covers video game movies. Why haven't I seen this episode released yet?
Because this is a Patreon exclusive set of 13 episodes. This is only being released to patrons, along with other great bonus content.
Well, don't just dilly-dally, Link. I know of all the great episodes available for free over at soundcloud.com/virtual theater. But tell me where I can sign up to get these bonus episodes.
Over at patreon.com/virtual theater, of course. You know, Princess, I think all this info deserves a kiss.
Not a chance, Link. I gotta go get those Legend of Zelda cartoon exclusive episodes. I'll see you later.